This is Module 2, Lesson 5, Part 3. It's on normal distributions, and I want us to take a look at the different type questions you can encounter. And then in 2 other videos, we're going to look at examples of the different types of questions that you could encounter and how to use the technology related to those. So there are primarily 2 types of questions that you can actually encounter when dealing with the normal distribution. There are probably really a lot more, but 2 that we're going to focus on. Regardless of which type you have to know that the distribution is normal, so you need to be told the distribution is normal. You also must be given or told the population mean, as well as the population standard deviation. The first type of problem that you can encounter, the question might be worded some way that it would say, find the area under the curve, or find the probability that da-da, or find the percentage that blah blah. Again, remember that the phrases percentage, probability, and area under the curve are synonymous. The main difference is how you write your final answer. With a type 1 question, you're given a specific X value with a restriction, like it needs to be less than the value or greater than the value. And on our calculator, we're going to use a command called the normal CDF, and I'll show you where to find it and what information to enter in it as we go throughout this presentation. Type 2, the question might say, find the cutoff score or find the X value. In the type 2 scenario, you actually start out knowing the percentage or the probability or the area, and you're actually trying to find what X value or what variable that value that would correspond to. It's a different command. In a sense, we're working backwards. And the calculator command is INV, which stands for inverse of the normal distribution. And again, I'll show you where to find it on the calculator and what information you have to enter in as we go throughout this presentation. So let's focus on the type 1 first. With type 1, there's really 4 different scenarios that you can encounter. Again, you can have less than, greater than, between, or you can have what we call the tails. Whenever you're working these problems, really whether you're doing type 1 or type 2, you want to draw the picture and shade the region or the area that you need or that you already have. One of the reasons I ask you to do this is because it helps you to visualize what information needs to be put into the calculator. It may also help you to see which command to use as well, and we'll talk about that. So you want to make sure you follow the directions, and I've given you kind of what the command should look like for each scenario in this presentation, so you may want to print it out so you can refer back to it as you're working through the practice problems and the homework problems. One of the things that sometimes confuse students, but it's actually a good thing to remember, is especially when you're dealing with type 1 questions, your answer is ultimately a probability, an area, or a percentage. And those, whether it's percentage, area, or probability, we know that's got to be a positive number. In Lesson 2, we talked about how that probability is between 0 and 1. And so we know that probability is never negative, area is never negative, nor is percent. Now you may have a z-score that's negative, but remember it's okay for z-scores to be negative because that implies that your particular value is below the mean. Okay, so let's take a look at the 4 scenarios here, and I've tried to give you a picture of each one. Symbol-wise, word-wise, it could say less than in the description. Symbol-wise, you would have P for probability, parentheses, the variable X is less than some number K. Visually, you draw a horizontal number line, our bell-shaped normal distribution, the mean is in the middle, and then we have our value k, which is our focus value or the one we're interested in. And we want to be less than, so we would be to the left. Now, remember here that this is a continuous probability distribution, so that really this left-hand side continues on forever and ever and ever to what we would call negative infinity. Now, it's going to show here on the screen, but I'm going to show you the keystrokes a little later. In the calculator command, then, to get this red region, which is what we're looking for, we would have to go from negative infinity to our value of k, give it the mean as well as the standard deviation. That's typically the format. You always give it the lowest value first, followed by the highest value, the mean, and the standard deviation. The second scenario you could have, it would say something like greater than, more than, it could be at least. So you'd have in symbols the probability P, parentheses, X, the variable, is greater than K. In terms of your picture, you would have a horizontal number line, our bell-shaped distribution with the mean in the middle, and then K, which is our point of interest. We want to be greater than that, so we would shade to the right. Again, because this is continuous, it's going to go on forever and ever to the right or to positive infinity. So again, we still use the normal CDF command. We give it our low value first, which is K, our high value, which would be infinity, the mean, and the standard deviation. The third scenario is a between, where we want to be between two numbers. So we would have the probability that K1 is less than our variable X, which is less than K. Visually, you have your horizontal number line with your bell-shaped distribution. The mean is still in the middle. We indicate the location of K1 and K2, and then we want to be between those two numbers, which again is the red region. In this one, we have a definite beginning and a definite end, so we're not concerned about infinity. So our calculator command, we would use normal CDF. We go from the low K1 to the high K2, give it the mean and the standard deviation. The last scenario is called the tails because we're looking for the regions on either end of the distribution. So it's like the tail of a cat or the tail of a dog. We're on the tails. But guys, be careful. This is the one that tends to give students trouble. You can recognize this scenario because you usually have some kind of joined statement using the word or possibly the word and. So you would have the probability P that your variable X is less than K1 or your variable X is greater than K2. Now the calculator command here is a little bit different because what we want to do is we're going to kind of remove this white region in the center of the graph. So we do one whole, we got the whole pizza minus the middle that we don't want, and that gives us what's left over, which would be the two red regions in the tails. And again, we'll take a look at that with some numbers and some examples in the next video. Some calculator information just to have you for reference. Again, because it's continuous and it goes on forever and ever in both directions, we have to have a way to enter infinity or negative infinity into the calculator. But the calculator doesn't have an infinity button. So we'd have to enter the largest number that we can. And the way we do that is we press the number 1, and then we press the blue second button, followed by the comma, which is going to put a little E on your screen, and then 99. What you've really entered is 1 times 10 to the 99th power, which would be the number 1 followed by 98 zeros. Now, hopefully you can realize that's a really big number. It's the biggest number we can enter into our calculator. We do the same thing for negative infinity. We just make it the one negative to show that we're on the left-hand side of the graph or on the negative side. To get to the two commands that we need, they're under the distribution menu on your calculator. So you press the blue second button, followed by the vars button. The vars button is next to clear on your calculator face, and above it, in blue, it has DISTR, which is the abbreviation for distribution. Option 2 is the normal CDF command that we use for type 1 questions, and option 3 is the inverse norm command used for type 2. And again, we're going to go through some examples together, and you can be able to see this on the screen and know how to go about it. The type 2 questions, we're finding the cutoff scores given a percentage using a normal distribution. Again, here you're kind of thinking about, how does the ACT determine your percentile rank? If you score 25 on the ACT, how do they know that you're in the 85th percentile? Could you be a genius? How would you determine the percentile rank of an IQ score? And that's kind of what this particular question is doing. It's coming up with those percentile ranks that you see on school reports and things. Again, it's important to draw the picture, shade the area that you have, that you're already given, and then follow the directions that I have for you here in terms of the command. The calculator command is inverse norm, area to the left of the cutoff score, then the mean, and then standard deviation. Now, the key thing here, and this is so important, is that you want to enter the area to the left of the cutoff score that you're trying to find. That's how the program in the calculator is written, and if you enter the wrong area, you would get the wrong answer. The challenge becomes sometimes in the questions, they give you something other than the area to the left, so you really have to pay attention to the phrasing in the actual problem. The other thing that's important is you have to enter that area to the left as a decimal value. So it's typically given as a percentage, and so you need to convert it to a decimal before entering it into the command. And in case you've forgotten to do that, you take the percentage, divide it by 100, and that's going to give you the decimal value. So we're going to take this information and in the next two videos use it to actually look at some examples of problems that you're going to see in the homework and in the practice problems.